Mr. Baker will be along in a few minutes. Thank you all for coming this evening. Hope everybody's okay. Or as okay as they can be. All right. Charles, you want to go first since you're sitting there? I guess you've got,
I'm ready to go.
well, go right ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Evening, Mayor, Board. Each of you has a handout, and you've got it on your screen. It's a presentation for the Sanitation Fund. So what we're going to go through is the yearly cost analysis going back to 2016, and then we're going to look at the solid waste rate increase that we've received recently from the West Rankin Utility Authority. Then a quick review of budget recommendations for fiscal year 22, a review of equipment recommendations that are included in that budget, and then we're going to look at some funding options for how we might fund the sanitation budget moving forward. So the first slide is the yearly cost analysis going back to 2016, and I just put that in there so that you could get an idea of how that sanitation contract cost has progressed over the last 5 years.
Charles, this is what we pay at West Rankin in the first dollar.
Yes, that's the sanitation contract cost that we incur. So that's got the residential rate. It's also got a small amount. It's usually $1,500 to $1,800 a month that we pay in other sanitation costs related to that contract. If you look at the second column where it says other cost, those are the other costs associated with the sanitation fund. So if you add those two together, you get the total value of what it was each year. On our solid waste contract, that was rebid this year. And I gave you a summary of the monthly service detail that we received for that solid waste contract. Prior to May 1st of this year, our rate was $11.92. So that is the rate that we receive from West Rankin Utility Authority for the solid waste contract. And that $11.92 is per billed household. So we have 8,550 households that we're having to account for on a twice weekly collection. May 1st, after that bid was approved by the West Rankin Board, that increased to $15.68 per month per billed household. So our monthly cost on that sanitation contract for the residential pickup is that $15.68 times that 8,550 billed households. That's where you come to the monthly total of $135,959.39. The net increase on that is essentially $3.76 per billed household per month. And that's what's billed to us. We still have to account for the other costs associated with the sanitation fund.
So that's in addition to that previous slide, like 1.359?
Well, the previous slide is just to give you an idea of how that cost has changed from year to year, from 2016 to 17, 18, and so on, just so that you'd have some historical understanding of how that fund has increased. And yes, that would be additional to that. Carly, go to the next slide. So this is the sanitation fund budget recommendation for 2022. And this is a summary of that budget. Salaries and wages, $104,675. That does include a extra person to operate the equipment that we're going to ask for. You've got some miscellaneous expenses that include fuel and trash bags and a number of other things we have to have for that department. R&M on equipment and vehicles, we got a couple of vans that we use. That's the 1,800. Your insurance is 17,400. I've got $20,000 in there for special events. That covers us if we have an event that requires additional dumpster cost or roll-off cost. The machinery and equipment is what we'll go over next, is the 137,480, and that is a new sweeper and a new leaf loader that we'll go over. And then the solid waste contract at the bottom is the $1,631,508. So that is the projected total cost for fiscal year '22 for the solid waste contract, is the $1,631,508. So that puts you at a total recommended budget of $1,965,863. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'll move into the review of the equipment. The first piece of equipment is a street sweeper. A couple of years ago, we discontinued the street sweeping program other than very specific areas of need, and the leaf collection program. So what we're looking to do is to revive both of those. So the street sweeper is what they call a compact model, but it's certainly big enough for us. Does not require a CDL2 drive. And so this, it's got an attachment that goes across, gets into the curb. It'd keep the streets clean. It would also assist in just keeping leaf litter out of the streets. We had a street sweeper for a long time. That machine became aged to a point to where keeping it repaired was going to cost as much or more than the rental or purchase of a new one yearly. Right behind the street sweeper brochure, we have a proposed lease agreement. So this is an example of the type agreement that we might be eligible for on this machine. It's 3 annual payments of $70,638.46 with a balloon of $28,000. So your option here would be at the end of 3 years, you could pay the remaining balance and own the machine, or you could sell the machine back and put any money you make on it back down on another new machine. But as far as the budget, the $70,638.46 is included in the budget proposal for the sweeper. Does anybody have any questions about the sweeper?
I do. Charles, in the past, what I remember, we'd had so many mechanical issues. We'd pick up rocks and get in that impeller and just create havoc. So how is this one different from causing that sort of problem?
Both the street sweeper and the leaf machine are designed as such that they will not pick up an object that heavy. And I actually went over and demoed it there at their shop, and they tried to pick up some rocks and a few other things, and it would not pick it up. So it'll pick up the items that you want it to pick up. So it'll pick up small pebbles and, of course, leaf litter and any type of normal paper litter. But if there's a rock that's large enough to hurt it, it's not going to go through the machine. So.
Is this something for daily use or routine based or as needed?
It would be our machine. We would have a dedicated person that would alternate between the leaf collection machine and the sweeper, so that we would be able to operate it on a normal routine basis. So it would work its way through the city, similar to the way we do mosquito spraying, where you've got a route and you're going to run the route. The leaf machine is really seasonal, so the sweeper would be something that we could use year round. For example, when we have parades, we hire that out. After we discontinued the use of our street sweeper, we would actually hire a company to come in and sweep based on need. And that could range anywhere from $30,000 and up, just depending on how much you wanted to sweep and how often. I know the last time we had a yearly contract, it was primarily just for the areas that have curb and gutter. And it was not, I think it was 3 times a year is what that was based on, and it was $32,000 for that. So from a standpoint of being able to sweep everything we need to sweep and keep it swept up and looking nice, this is a better deal financially. If you're just going to sweep once a year, you'd be better off hiring a contractor. But if you want to keep it swept and actually stay on top of it, you're going to need your own truck, which we had for a long time. It just became aged, and we couldn't keep it in an operational condition.
You mentioned in this budget, proposed budget, one additional person.
Yes.
Would that be enough to man these machines?
Yes.
So you would have somebody that could man?
Yes. Yeah, the street sweeper and the leaf machine can be operated by a single person.
So I hadn't heard you mention limb. We're not going back to a limb pickup.
Limb pickups are completely different cost associated. It's not in this. We are looking at that, but it won't be included as part of this. Any other questions about the street sweeper? If not, I'm going to move on to the leaf machine. And that is the vac pack. So I have seen this truck in operation. There's a steering wheel on both the left hand and the right hand of the truck. You can operate it from either side driver position. There is a joystick in the middle. The hose that you see is operated by a cylinder and can be manipulated with the joystick. So you can sit in the truck on the right-hand side and actually look at where that hose is, and with that joystick move it around as you pick those leaves up. It will not, when they demoed it, they couldn't make it pick up a rock any bigger than a pebble. Certainly wouldn't pick up a brick. So if you have a pile of leaves and you have a brick or large rocks, pieces of concrete, it's going to get everything around that and leave those heavy items. This is both a leaf mulcher and a compactor. So any of you that were familiar with our old leaf machines, they were leaf mulchers, but they did not compact. So if you went out and you picked up a large pile of leaves, maybe 2, you were going to fill that machine up and you had to go back and dump, and so you had multiple trips back and forth. This machine, you can go out and run it half a day, dump once, come back, run it the rest of the day, and dump at the end of the day. And it can be operated by a single individual.
And where would this be done?
We have a permit for a leaf mulch pile at the shop. We operated that previously. We used to do mulch giveaways just to get rid of it. But we would go back to that same process. So during the season, you would have both this machine and the sweeper. So between the two of them, you could certainly take care of the piles that residents push out. And then, of course, as you have wind and items, you're going to have leaves in the street. Most of the time, you have more in the street than you have in the pile. The sweeper would take care of those. And again, it does have the attachment that actually gets into the curb so that you're not having to hit mailboxes to get over there and get that curb swept out. But
So we'll allow residents to rake their leaves to the curb to be vacuumed, or?
that is what this machine is intended for. You would rake your leaves to the curb and the machine pulls up and sucks them up. It would be a modern version of what we did before. So what we did before, we had a pull-behind trailer. It was a manual operation trailer, so you had to have a truck to pull it, and then you needed 2 to 4 people to manage it so that you could kind of rake everything toward the trailer. This is designed to where as long as it's piled within that 15-foot distance of the curb, that's just going to pull up and it'll sit there with one man and operate it. So more equipment expense, less labor expense. So you've got the brochure for the backpack. You also, behind that brochure, also have a lease recommendation. So we would be eligible for a version of this, depending on where the final numbers came in. But what they ran that at, it would be 3 annual payments of $66,841.08 with a balloon payment of $38,000 at the end of that. So we could pay it off and run the machine, or we could sell the machine back to them and put that money down on our next machine. So the way the budget is set up currently is to include those yearly payments for both of those machines. This does take care of the maintenance and warranty associated with that. So with these machines, we wouldn't have to worry about a motor blowing or something happened to it. We'd have to pay for oil change and greasing the machine, that sort of thing. But any sort of catastrophic damage to it would be taken care of with warranty. These machines are manufactured and sold by Vacuum Sales and Services in Richland, so they're a local company. If we have an issue, they are close. Their shops here. This is not just a satellite office for them. This is their main office. Any questions about the backpack machine? The last slide is the sanitation fund rate options. So option one, if you take the increase that we received from the bid that West Rankin received and you add it to our $13.75 that we are currently charging, that increase comes out to $17.51. I rounded that down to $17.50. If you use the $17.50 rate, you have a revenue expectation of $1,795,500. That will leave you $170,363 remaining out of the $1,965,863 budget recommendation that would have to be covered out of the general fund from millage. Option two would be to completely fund the sanitation fund through the rate structure, and that is the $19.25. That would give you $1,975,050. So you would have about a little less than a $10,000 cushion with the $19.25.
So the 170 in option one covers the machines, correct?
It covers the difference between what the $17.50 will generate. So the 170 is a bit more than the machines. If you go back to the budget recommendation, the machinery is $137,480. So the 170 is a little more than the machinery. It's the difference between the expected budget recommendation and the expected revenue that would be generated by the $17.50, which again, the $17.50 is $3.75 plus our current rate of $13.75. So essentially what we're doing is we're just adding the rate increase that we received from West Rankin Utility Authority to the current rate.
So the 170 would be covered out of the general fund.
Yes, it would have to be accounted for out of the general fund.
So about 3/4 of
Charles, can you give me an estimate of how much how much work you spend, dollars we spend on stopped-up culverts because of these leaves. I mean, would that eliminate some of that work?
It would certainly help. The backpack does have an attachment that goes with it that you do use to clean out any curb inlets. You know, I haven't put an exact number on that, but every clogged curb inlet work order that we have is leaves and debris. It is very rarely any more than that.
I know we've got one on Sunline that you have to regularly go check, don't you, about once every
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks?
Yeah, you know, it runs seasonal. During the heavy leaf season, we clean out a lot of them, and we're still cleaning them out now. Every time it rains hard, we'll find 2 or 3 more that aren't draining properly. And, you know, occasionally you'll find something odd that washed down them, but typically when you pull it out of there, it's leaves, pine straw, a few little sticks and things. It's just stuff that's small enough to be picked up by the water and washed into that. This would both limit the amount that would be going in the first place, and it would also add another machine to our list that can suck those inlets out. Currently, we have one vacuum excavator, and we use the vacuum excavator for that same purpose. It's not really what it's intended for, but it does do a pretty good job of it. This actually has an attachment that goes on it, and it's intended for that use.
If we covered the whole thing, it'd be about a $550 increase on the sanitation, if we went 1925.
Yeah.
Well, I can say from being in Cross Gates, there's a lot of folks that'd be tickled to death to have it back.
Yes. I mean, it's been a consistent problem. We've seen people with 50, 60 bags of leaves out, and more than that. There's
I
some
didn't have
people.
one last week, did it, Carly?
Yeah.
She didn't have bags all over her yard, did she?
Yeah, that was a little over 40.
How many bags do you have, 20, 22?
No, it's her and her neighbor, total a little over 40 bags.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And they've had them out before, they're just still raking leaves. So, yeah, there are some people that have really big trees, and they can pretty easily get up to 100 bags during one season, which we're grateful that they keep them raked up because it keeps them out of our streets. But that's I would say that's the exception, not the rule, in terms of how many people are actually bagging their leaves versus just letting them blow around, letting nature take its course.
I'm just gonna say from my opinion, and I'm only one of 7, I just say we bite the bullet and do the 1925 and just put out that we're gonna be picking up leaves. And I believe there's some in Cross Gates that'll be thrilled.
Well, I think everyone
It'll start
will be
back.
happy to see the LEAF program come back. That's been a consistent complaint since we discontinued it. So I think it'll be beneficial to the city, and I certainly think it'll be a very welcome service to bring back. The street sweeper probably won't be as big a hit, but it will help with the aesthetics, and it'll make a big difference in terms of how much debris is actually washing down the curb.
Mayor, are we anticipating any other type of increase that will be reflected on the water bill?
Yes. And just a point of order of what Charles just went through, really you talked about 3 or 4 things. So let's just do a very brief analysis of what just came out of Charles's mouth. One, we do pay West Rankin Utility Authority for sanitation, for garbage pickup, folks. Everybody knows that. Now, We went out for bid, and in that bid, Flowood, Pearl, Richland, and Brandon all go together to volume buy, if you will, to try to drive the cost down. Well, that's great. There were 4 packets that were picked up, and Waste Management has been pretty good to work with over the last number of years. So a variety of COVID or whatever else, cost of equipment, cost of blank, you fill in the blank. There were 4 bids that were picked up. Only 1 bid came back out of those 4. So it's not like we had a lot of choice in who to pick from, which is part of what Charles started off with here. So you've got a garbage sanitation rate that we're stuck with. You can screen, you can wiggle, you can look for other options, which we have done, but you're kind of stuck with that. So that first contract was actually a 4-year contract with 2 single-year extensions, and we've used all 6 of those years. So we're stuck with it for a while, unless you can come up with some other way to handle garbage pickup. Now, the other side of that is, you really get down to it, you're having somebody come to your house, pick up your garbage, haul it off, landfill it for you for somewhere in the, I used to calculate $1.13 a pickup. But you know, really, with this increase, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.60 something. So, you know, you look at it from the value of what you're getting, you're still getting a good deal. So that's garbage pickup. So then to Dwight, to answer your questions about leaf and limb and street sweeping. Now, we're not advocating, look at this as a preliminary budget request as we enter into a budget cycle. So what Public Works is asking is, if you want to go back to a leaf pickup and a street sweeper, and I'm pro both of those, is that we're going to figure out how to pay for it. So you got 2 methods to pay for it. One is you pay for it in the monthly utility bill that is generated. There's one source of revenue that pays for that. Or the other one, as Chris pointed out, is some percentage of a mill. Just a few years ago, a mill was about $225,000 a year, probably somewhere around $235,000 now. But still, you're either going to be using millage, property tax to pay for that equipment, or you're going to pay for it on the utility bill at the month. Now, I don't believe we're at the point where Public Works, Carly and Charles, are to the point where they're here to make a recommendation to you. So the recommendation is everything costs money. And if you want to go these routes, and what we need to do is embed these in our budget cycle coming up in the next few weeks and present you with what we feel like is the absolute best cycle. Now, your last part of your question, Dwight, was, are there going to be other increases? Yes, there will be an increase because of the West Rankin Utility Authority treatment plant, which comes online here in just a few weeks, which means we will forever be broken from the Savannah Street plant, at least in today's dollars and whatever else we can do. So we will no longer be paying rates that go to the city of Jackson for our wastewater treatment plant. Now, Charles and I go back and forth quite a bit on this, and quite a bit of disparity. I use numbers that I get from Bruce Stevens with West Rankin Utility Authority. We believe, and I was on the phone with Bruce today, he believes that somewhere between 440 and 480 is somewhere the number is going to fall. Now, we should know what that number and that's per thousand number, per 1,000 gallons of flow is how it impacts us on our utility bills. We should know in the next 2 to 3 weeks exactly what the utility authority is going to be billing the city of Brandon per 1,000 gallons. So we will be able to embed that into our budget going into next year. So right now it's a little early to be giving you a number, but yes, you can anticipate some amount. Currently that rate is $3.50 per 1,000 is what we charge our ratepayers, right? So we will have that number in short order for you, and again, we will work that into our budget. So as far as the Chris, as far as the ad valorem and property tax and what a mill is and isn't. I know it's ancient history, but some years ago, we eliminated the millage that was going in a sanitation fund and put it in the general fund, just trying to keep going along with the general fund, just trying to keep the boat afloat. We've done that. So we would go back and take some portion of a mill, half a mill, three-quarters a mill, whatever it equates out to be in dollars, and put that back in the sanitation fund, which is, and yes, in a sense, it's coming out of the general fund, but no, it's not. It's there to support sanitation. So that was an awful lot. Dwight, did I answer your question?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Board, y'all got other questions? Chris, Harry, Lou, Jared? Is that kind of? So we're dealing with an unknown, and I can't give you an unknown until two things happen, till the ball drops with West Rankin Utility, so that we know what per thousand we're going to be paying. We'll know that in just a few weeks. And then as far as equipment goes, street sweepers or leaf machines, we will need to figure out how we're going to pay for that, either through our monthly rate utility rates or through property tax.
The only urgency associated with the solid waste rate is that we do have to go through the process of advertising that so that we can get that ball rolling and try to get that rate incorporated into what we're billing our residents.
So irrelevant. We're going to be paying that, so we need to go ahead and take action on that and get that advertisement in the paper so that everyone's aware of that.
Yep.
All right? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Charles, you got any more on any of that?
Not unless there are questions.
So if we approve that tonight, then that's not a rate, it's just approving for you to put it to bid.
I'm
Put it in
sorry, sir.
paper. So we're not approving a rate tonight, it's just for you to go ahead and advertise?
That's up to the board. If the board is ready, I gave you two options. If you're ready to move forward with one of those options, then we could certainly do that. If you're not ready to move forward with one of those options, we would table it and pick it up at hopefully the next board meeting. The sooner we can come to an understanding and that the board approves that rate, the sooner we can move the ball forward and actually start the process of getting that rate incorporated into what we're currently billing.
Yeah.
In the notice provision that we have, that, so 3 weeks before, we have
It's a microphone.
Yeah. 3 weeks before, we have to run a notice in the paper that's, that gives the citizens the notice of intent. Part of that says that we're going to increase the rate, but it also says, correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, that if we're going to allocate millage, we need to identify how much millage we're going to allocate, right? So the rate will be X, allocated through fees. So the fee's gonna be $725, I'm assuming if it's not fully allocated, it'd be $1725. I think that number was
$17.50.
$17.50, and X percent of a mill. It can be said it's not an increase, it's just an allocation, like the
Right.
mayor had mentioned.
But we have to have those numbers set before we can make that advertisement.
Right. When does everything come to play, Mr. Mayor?
Yesterday, we are collecting less than we're paying now. We are collecting less than what we are paying for garbage pickup now. All right, everybody follow that? So, if you're not careful, you're mixing apples and oranges when you talk about the budget and millage and those kind of things. I think right now the important thing is to focus on garbage pickup. We're locked into that. We can't do anything about it, and we need to go ahead and advertise for that immediately.
I was not suggesting that, I just.
No.
throwing that out.
You're going to have to pay for it one or two ways.
That's what I'm saying, if
Yeah.
you do it, I think you need to do it through that, I mean, it's almost a user fee type.
Correct. Okay. So, but for garbage pickup rates now, my recommendation is that we go ahead and act on that because we need to advertise for 3 weeks, and we are collecting less than what we're actually paying West Rankin now for garbage pickup. Am I off base in saying that, Charles?
No, sir, you are correct.
All right. Answer your question, Harry?
So I guess which way are we gonna approve tonight if we got advertised?
What is-
Option one or option two?
No, well, we're not doing again, this got a little bit long, but we're actually mixing two conversations. First conversation is garbage pickup. Okay, that's A. Second part, or B, is if you want to do leaf machines and street sweepers, then that's a secondary conversation that we're not going to act on tonight. We're just giving you information to make an informed decision when we start putting the budget together.
We do need to have the rate advertised as it will be, so that if we advertise a rate that is less than the $19.25, whether it's $17.50 or $16.50, whatever the difference in the final budget is, will be taken out of the millage. So we can make a rate recommendation that doesn't include that, which would be worked out during the budget process. The equipment and the additional cost that would be taken out of millage would be worked out in the budget process. But we would have to go ahead and handle the garbage collection. Now, the rate would entirely cover the garbage collection at a minimum, and therefore you would not have to advertise any millage being collected for garbage collection. So it's just the rate itself. So if we go that route, we are committing to put some millage toward the sanitation fund if we make those budget choices to revive the leaf program and the sweeping program. Is that accurate?
I'm just saying, if we're going to adopt the rate increase tonight, based on that, and we're planning on doing the leaf and putting on our back truck, why not go ahead and do it at one time, rather than do one now and then 1-2 months from now?
Well, to increase garbage rates, you got to advertise it for 3 weeks. We're already collecting less than what we're paying.
And that's what I'm
So we're
saying.
going backwards.
So
Well,
you advertise it one time.
I hear you. But, so when you advertise in 3 weeks' time for our next FY budget, that's a little bit further down the road. So no, we're not required by state statutes to do that until September 15th. So we want to get it done by Labor Day. Angela, I'm not speaking for you, Emma, but we want to get our budgets done. We still got to go through budget hearings from all the department heads and look at a variety of things before we're able to do that.
Well, I would say like we'll do 1925. I mean, it's always been, or in my opinion, it's a user fee. And
It is a
With millage?
service based on a particular rate, yes.
It's a
Just like
pass-through.
water rates, it's a
That's right.
user.
It's just a pass-through. And if you put millage to it, you have, to me, most people all use probably about the same amount of garbage unless you're a single person. So I know it's difficult when to say, well, we're going to charge this one person $19.25 a month to maybe pick up 2 bags a week, and I might have 6. So I'm getting a better deal, but it's a pass-through to me. Just
Right. And not everyone has leaves, but the city as a whole has to deal with the leaf issue. And if it's not in a curb and gutter, well, then it's in an open ditch and it's clogging culverts up. And so, we spend a substantial amount of our time just going around cleaning out open ditches and cleaning out culverts and dealing with the leaf litter, one shovelful or one mini excavator bucket at a time.
All right, so you and Chris feel the same way, go ahead and bite the bullet. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, if we're going to adopt the rate, go ahead and adopt that. Whichever one you decide
Okay.
to adopt.
All right.
I want to make sure I understand. The current rate right now is $15.68.
No, the current rate that we charge our residents is $13.75. The rate that we're charged by West Rankin for garbage is $15.68 as of May 1st.
Okay.
Prior to May 1st, it was $11.92.
Right.
The additional cost above the $11.92 was to take care of the additional sanitation services we provide. For example, if you see the inmate crew going down the road with a van, That's paid for out of sanitation. So we've been at $13.75. They raised our rate from $11.92 to $15.68. That went into effect May 1st. So since May 1st, we've been billing $13.75 and we're being charged $15.68.
Okay.
But part of that $13.75 is accounting for other costs. So all of that $13.75 is not available from a cash standpoint to go against the $15.68 anyway. It's a difference of $3.76.
Give me an example of other costs.
Well, the van,
Okay.
you've got personnel that drive the van, gas, we've got 2 people that work in that department right now, so those are the additional costs. It's not a lot. The bulk of the cost does go to the sanitation contract. And if you look at the yearly evaluation of it, you'll see that the big number is the sanitation contract, and the number to the right is the additional cost yearly. And that's fuel, that's the van, the personnel. We've got to pay inmate meals, that sort of thing.
Okay, so if I'm understanding, Chris, what y'all are saying is what you've mentioned is instead of just going to that 1750, go ahead and look at the 1925. Is that what, Lou, is that what y'all were talking about?
And that covers the leak truck and the sweeper.
Yeah.
Both of them.
And the additional employee to operate those.
Okay. Is there, and I'm not sure how to ask this, of course, the rate went up to the 1568, but the people were still paying the 13.
Yes,
We
we're
were still
being
paying the
charged.
1375.
Yes.
Is there a chance that it's going to go up again? And we're going to have to come back? I mean, is it going to go up more than the 1750 or?
It shouldn't go up, no.
There,
That is bid through West Rankin,
Mhm.
and they just passed that cost on to the city based on the number of households they pick up.
Yes.
So that rate that they charge the city of Brandon, they charge the city of Flowood, they charge the city of Pearl, everybody that's in West Rankin has that same rate.
there is a yearly CPI. So if they take up the option in their contract next year, then they have a built-in increase. I think it's 3, is it 3.5? 2.5, I apologize. So that's built into the contract. That'd be that small yearly increase that you would see. If they choose not to take up the contract on the additional time, once the base time runs on it, then it would have to be rebid. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Correct.
If we approve that, and you can bid, you can put the advertised paper 19,
$19.25.
what the rate, we rate would be.
Yes. And that would fully fund the sanitation fund as per the recommended budget, which does include the cost of the 2 vehicles that, the 2 pieces of equipment that we've looked at. Now, we would bid those out. So we would hope that our final number would creep down a bit. But that 1925 gives us slightly less than a $10,000 cushion. So as you had those yearly CPI and other cost increases, you would hopefully absorb a little bit of that going forward and have a couple of more years before you would have to address any type of rate increase.
All right. Sound like there's agreement enough to put that on the agenda to vote on when we get to it? Board, you good with that? All right.
All right.
All right, that's what we'll do. We'll add that to the agenda then and move forward with that so we can go ahead and advertise that for 3 weeks and
Thank you.
take board action tonight. All right. So, Got anything you want to say to the board about disc golf?
Only thing,
Thump that microphone and make sure it's working, please. Identify yourself. Angela. Sean. I want to make him get up.
the only thing me and Carson wanted to add to our options we gave y'all a couple weeks ago was for you, option 2 was we were saying we were going to 3 different sites. Those sites were locations Mayor Lee wanted to look at in the city of Brandon. I read it wrong. It wasn't John wanting to go look at Crystal Springs and the res. It was him wanting to look at the locations Mayor Lee had inputted on the option 2, the $6,000. That's all.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
This site review by Mr. Hout, this is not to just look at the feasibility of a disc golf. Is my understanding it was to lay out the course.
Right. This would be phase 1 to that. What me and Carson have sent him, he knows that a course a top 5 course in the South would be there. There's no doubt in that from everything we've sent John. There's no question that he'd want to put a course out there. This visit would be to get a better understanding of the course layout, of the property layout. But yeah, he wouldn't come down and say, oh, well, this property doesn't have what we would need. He already knows from just looking at the simple pictures we've sent him and looking at the bird's eye view of the property.
My question is, I guess, does that $9,900 include the design phase of that? Is that a package deal, or is that just him coming down here looking at 3 sites and say, yeah, I think we can do it here?
That would be him coming down and getting an idea of the property. It would not be the design of the course.
So then that's additional cost to design it, and
Correct, yes.
who does that?
John would do that. The process, I'm not 100% sure on the process on what John would need to do, but he's talked about, being down here 3 to 6 weeks, going through the land and doing that. I think this would be the initial first visit to take a look at the property.
And
But
$9,900 just for him to come down here and look
I
at
think
3
the
sites?
options, I don't have the paperwork.
That's the
on
one
it.
we just received in our packet.
Okay. Well, I know,
It was 4 sites, I believe.
okay. Well,
Perhaps
believe-
John needs to come here and talk to us.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think option 2 we had was $6,000, but
Yeah.
it may be something different, but 9,900 was an option that I had.
Yeah, because the proposal I was reading here from him, it's talking about looking at the topo, designing it, and that was my understanding, that it was kind of a turnkey. But just for him to come down and say, yeah, this 1 site out of 4 is going to be the best Mayor and I could go do that,
Yeah. Well.
Mayor's good at it.
Well, if the price is different, I don't want to determine us not making a disc golf course just on one designer.
I understand.
We have several other designers we could use if price is a problem. But this would just, from what John and Dee have spoken with us about, the prices, options, which she said they can negotiate on if that's a problem. I think option 1 was about $4,000 and option 2 was $6,000. And they could just focus on the one property. I'm not sure on what the other properties, I know we were talking about putting a micro course at a different property location, but the one we are focusing on is behind the amphitheater, that land right there. And if that's the case, we can just get them to focus clearly on that and not look at any other property.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Does this price include his airfare, hotel rooms, or is
Well,
that?
when I spoke with Dee, I think it would be about $750 for option 1, added for room and board and travel. And then the option 2 would be $1,000 extra. But she said if that was a problem, they could just do mileage and drive from Texas to here, which I think would be a better option anyways, because they couldn't bring their supplies that they would need. on the plan. Thanks.
Matt Dodd, you want to give us you got 5 minutes, so?
I know y'all are disappointed that there's only a couple minutes left. I know you wanted to hear a long presentation about building code, but on your agenda tonight is consideration to adopt the 2018 building code and 2017 electric code. I printed out, I will say the majority of the proposed amendments are the same as the previous adoption. Those are the code books right there, so that is what you're considering adopting tonight. I did print out a section pertaining to the International Property Maintenance Code. It's really loud.
Could you read all of that for us, sir?
If you'd like me to, I will, word for word. Which one do you want to start
I
with?
mean, we learned from Mark Baker the best. The legislature asked everything be read.
In your board packet was all the proposed amendments, but I did print out the section on the property maintenance code so that you could kind of pay attention to that, because I would say, and the property maintenance code is the smallest book, but we're probably proposing the most amendments to it. Most of them are additions. And I don't know if you want to go down through it, or if y'all had a chance to read through those, if you have any questions about any of those proposed amendments.
So let me ask you something. It says vegetation located in an unimproved, cleared lot shall be maintained to prohibit vegetation over 24 inches in height.
That's correct. So
Someone's allowing their property to grow up. They've got pasture.
if it's a pasture, if it's a cleared lot, and it's just grass, then it can be 24 inches. Typically, it's 12. But on an unimproved lot that is just pasture land, they have a little bit more leeway. It's not clear in our ordinance right now, and so we're clarifying that instead of being maintained and manicured to a 12-inch status, you can have up to 24 inches.
Would that go for a vacant lot in the subdivision?
That would go for a vacant lot. Well, it has to be, I think it has to be an acre. No, that is correct. It could be 24 inches on that.
So you're asking for us to prove this tonight?
Correct.
Keystone, as you know, we have to conversation about it now.
Yes.
And their acreage goes 12 inches.
Well, I know. I mean, I can certainly look at this particular proposed amendment, and we can modify it if you do not agree with the 24 inches. But if it's a vacant lot, it's not like there's a homeowner that's going out there every week and mowing it. You can have it up to 24 inches, which is, unimproved lot, correct. Sir?
You need to take it. That's 24 inches this time.
Well, I was like that.
24. So neither one of them are 24 inches.
But to address Alderman Middleton's concern with regard to a house in Crossgates, this wouldn't apply because we still have cleanup. We're not talking about improved lot, we're talking about.
Unimproved lot, correct. 24 inches. On an improved lot, it's 12. Correct.
The lot's been cleared, just that never right.
Any other questions on? I can be. Y'all have any other questions about those? All right, thank you.
All right, board, we got 5 minutes left before we begin our board meeting. Is there anything else you'd like to bring before the rest of the board? Anyone? All right, we will begin our board meeting in 5 minutes.